Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is post-match reaction showtime after Liverpool have just seen out what was in the end a pretty comfortable win against Leicester. I think all of us were going into this game with everything that went on around it. The players that were missing through COVID, through injuries, the fact that we were coming up against a Leicester side that started the weekend top of the league. A lot of us expected a slog. A lot of us expected a very, very tough game for Liverpool, and 3 points was about as much as you could possibly hope for. But what we've ended up being given is a comfortable scoreline, a relatively easy 3 points, and an entertaining display from Liverpool as well. I thought one thing that I really enjoyed about today's game was the fact that I enjoyed it. The fact that the team as a whole played like a Liverpool side, regardless of all the lads that were missing. It didn't look like a second string Liverpool side. It didn't look like a team that had been depleted by injuries. If you for some whatever reason weren't able to see the players' faces and the names on the back of their shirts, you wouldn't have been able to tell that, Virgil van Dijk wasn't there for Liverpool today, that we didn't have Thiago or Jordan Henderson, our captain in midfield, that we didn't have Mohamed Salah tearing it up down the right-hand side. This still looked and felt and played like a Liverpool team. And before I get into the game as a whole and individual incidents that happened, I just want to talk about how that is an absolute vindication of the process that Jurgen Klopp and all of his coaching staff and all the staff, both players, coaching and anything else to do with the club, have just committed superbly to one unifying vision that means that all the players play in the same way. They all play like Liverpool players. They all perfectly fit the system that we go for in the game. Diogo Jota can do the same things that any other Liverpool attacker can do. Curtis Jones and Naby Keita come into the midfield relatively from the cold. They haven't played too much this season, and they do the roles that you'd expect from Jordan Henderson, from Thiago Alcantara, from Gini Wijnaldum if he was in a more advanced role. I thought he did fantastically in the more deeper role. Fabinho, who's not even a centre-half, is able to drop in and do Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez's jobs. Maybe not quite as well as them, because there's an obvious reason why Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez are generally the first choice centre-halves. And the same goes for obviously James Milner, who's not Trent Alexander-Arnold, but still put in a great performance tonight. And there was no area on the pitch where you felt like we were lacking. There was no area that you looked at and thought, that's a weak spot. You can look at the back line and talk about the players that are missing. It didn't look weakened. It didn't look like a Liverpool defence that was under the cosh, that was going to struggle. The same goes for the midfield. And if you ask me, that was the area of the pitch I was most worried about going into this. I think the defence, even though there are lads missing, the balance looked right. It looked like we had the right players in the right areas there. The same goes for the attack, even without Mohamed Salah. But the midfield, with no Henderson, no Fabinho, no Thiago, who probably, if we're being honest, that's our first choice midfield three, both in terms of quality and balance. I'm looking at the players that started today and I thought there isn't quite the right balance there. They could be exposed defensively. I think Keita and Jones might end up getting in each other's way more than anything else. But they did absolutely fantastically. Jones was great as the more advanced midfielder. Keita a little bit more deeper, as we've seen from him so far this season, playing in a bit more of the style of Gini Wijnaldum than an attacking midfielder like what Felipe Coutinho was in his latter stages at the club. And then Gini Wijnaldum was also absolutely excellent, as I said, in that defensive role. So it's hard to come away with anything bad to say about that performance, which is not a bad thing, of course. That's absolutely great. You want to be coming away with nothing but positives, and that is what I'm coming away with. I thought, like I said, to a man, Liverpool were absolutely excellent. Of course, the first goal, there's an element of fortune about it. It's not something that we've tried to do. We haven't looked at them before the game and thought, let's cross the ball into Johnny Evans when we have corners. But it works out perfectly well for Liverpool, and in some ways, the phrase "you make your own luck" actually it comes true in this scenario, because Liverpool were dominant from the off. They'd made chances before that. They'd come close to scoring. They looked like the better team. They looked like a team that was going to go on to win the game handsomely, as they eventually did. And, Johnny Evans was basically just embracing the inevitable in a way. And, of course, it's impossible for Kasper Schmeichel to save it, because he's never going to expect his centre-half to just put a bullet header past him for no reason. But, of course, that got Liverpool off to a great, great start. You've then got the goal from Jota, which is just sublime in so many ways. I mean, let's start with I think Joel Matip before the ball even gets to Andrew Robertson. I think Matip plays the ball over probably about 8 Leicester City players to get the ball to Robertson. Robertson then has to beat a man, dribbles past him, which is not something that maybe we talk about much from him. We talk mainly about his crossing ability, how good he is at putting the ball on a plate for strikers. But he dribbles past the oncoming defender pretty well. That creates the space. He then gets his head up, sees where the run is, gets his head down onto the ball, eyeballs it all the way, whams it right onto a plate for Diogo Jota. You know, if he picked up that ball, Andrew Robertson, and held it where he wanted it to go, it would have been right there. And then the header from Jota is brilliant as well. I know it's a great cross, but there's still a hell of a lot to do because that's the nature of the Premier League. And I think Kasper Schmeichel and everyone else is expecting him to try and bullet it into that near post, and that's what bamboozles the goalie because he gets just the right amount of weight on it. Not only does he place it right in terms of getting it towards that far post, he pushes it down as well, which makes it impossible for the goalie to save. If he heads it in that direction, but it's at sort of shoulder height maybe, which would have been the easier thing to do, as difficult as it was already, Kasper Schmeichel probably saves it, but what he does is he gets it down, he gets it into the turf, it bounces it in and over the line, and Liverpool go 2-0 up right before half-time as well, and that puts you in such a comfortable position because, of course, Leicester are, at the end of the day, a good side. I'm not going to say that Liverpool exposed them today and showed that they're not as good as everyone has been saying. I think they've had favourable fixtures, although, of course, they have gone to the Etihad and the Emirates this season and won at both of those venues, but they came to Anfield today and Liverpool just established dominance straight away from the really early stages of the match. You felt like Liverpool had control and it was just going to be a matter of whether or not we could make that count, whether or not we could score our chances. And when players like Diogo Jota are getting on the end of those chances being created, by and large, the ball's going to end up in the back of the net and Liverpool will come away with the win. And because Leicester are a good side, you need that 2-goal cushion. You need a little bit of breathing space because they have got people like Jamie Vardy who can create something out of nothing, who aren't going to give up, who are going to constantly give you problems. Man City had it when they went 1-0 up against Leicester early on this season, ended up conceding 5 and getting absolutely battered in their own backyard. So Liverpool did very well to make sure that didn't happen, that they made their dominance count, not just with the one own goal from Johnny Evans, but with that extra one from Diogo Jota. And as I said, right before half-time, it's the perfect time for us to score because it just deflates Leicester. It changes their view of the match completely. Suddenly they're coming out for that second half wondering whether they can even get anything out of the match, whereas if they come out at 1-0, they're thinking they are right in it and anything could happen from beyond that point. But I thought Liverpool did well throughout the game to temper Leicester a little bit. I think attack was the best form of defence. We just kept creating chances. Roberto Firmino seemed to have some kind of voodoo curse on him for most of the game. If you haven't seen the graphic of the ball not crossing the line for that chance he has about maybe 10 minutes before he finally does get the goal, it's absurd. I mean, genuinely, we've said this before with Liverpool chances that haven't crossed the line, but I think genuinely with this one, it couldn't get any closer to being a goal without it being a goal. It's just, you felt so bad for the fella because he played well and he hasn't played too well so far this season. I think we all know that now. It's fair to say, anyone can admit it. Jurgen Klopp obviously won't publicly admit it because he wants to back his players, but we know it hasn't quite been falling for him, both in terms of goal scoring and his overall play, and the overall play is arguably what's more important for Roberto Firmino. His overall play today was, apart from the odd wayward pass, you know, he's still not at his absolute best, but he was the Firmino that we need him to be. He was linking things up. He was creating spaces for others. He allows Diogo Jota to have those chances. The same goes for Sadio Mane, who had several chances throughout the game and was afforded a fair amount of space in very key areas, probably because of, I mean, almost definitely because of the movement of Roberto Firmino. But because of the way he was getting so many chances and so many good chances as well to put the game to bed and get his goal drought kind of over and out of the way. I know he did score against Sheffield United before the last international break, so in terms of league appearances, he's not on a massive drought, but he's not exactly banging them in at the moment, it's fair to say. But it just seemed everything was refusing to go right for him right at the crucial moment, and as a result it was frustrating because you felt you don't want a good performance to be ruined and overshadowed by the fact he couldn't hit a barn door whenever he got given the opportunity to score a goal. So it is great to see that he does put the ball in the back of the net, that he finally gets that goal that hopefully makes him kick on. I know he got that goal against Sheffield United and it didn't necessarily give him too much of a boost, but I think coupled with the performance he had today, and he certainly looked like a weight had been lifted off him, the fact that it's the third goal of the game, the fact that it puts the game to bed and we can focus less on how it affects the result and more about how it affects his confidence. You could see all the lads were absolutely over the moon for him. They all come over and celebrate. You know, he has them absolutely massive pearly white gnashers beaming for a good minute or so afterwards, and that's just what you want to see. That you want Liverpool players to be happy because things aren't going great for us at the moment in terms of it, not on the pitch obviously, but in terms of injuries, what's going on behind the scenes. We have been dealt a lot of blows, and it's something I spoke about in the pre-match video. When things get tough, this Liverpool squad bands together, they work for each other, and you saw that today. Every single player was doing everything to help out their teammates. They would run through brick walls, they would lay down their lives almost to try and help out their fellow players in red, and that is what you need in these kind of situations in a season like this, when everything is going to go against you at some point, when so much could go wrong in very short spaces of time, and it's all very unpredictable. You need the lads to have a real sense of team spirit, and as I said at the top of the video, it's testament to what Jurgen Klopp is doing at Liverpool at the moment. You know, that game is almost one of the best representations of how far we've come under Jurgen Klopp. You look back at previous eras, and not knocking them, but managers like Brendan Rodgers, you think if we'd ended up in a situation like this with that many injuries, things probably would have fallen apart, and that would happen to most managers. But Klopp and his whole team have done so well to almost bulletproof this Liverpool team that it doesn't matter what goes wrong, and it must be so frustrating for rivals as well. You know, Tottenham, Chelsea, Man City, Leicester, all those teams at the top half of the table, or the teams that are hoping to challenge for the title, will have been looking up at us this weekend and thinking that's a tough game against a good side with everything going against them in terms of injuries. If it's ever going to go wrong for them, and if other teams are ever going to get an opportunity to pull away from Liverpool, which is obviously a massive thing to do given how good Liverpool were last year and still are, how disheartening is that for Jose Mourinho, for Pep Guardiola, for every manager of a big side in the country at the moment, or a side that's challenging for the league, to not only see Liverpool win, but Liverpool kind of walk it, to be honest. For Liverpool to just roll their opponent over, make it, obviously it wasn't easy, but we made it look easy because we worked so incredibly hard. And of course, it gives us huge momentum going forward because things aren't going to let up. We've got games coming thick and fast in the Champions League, in the Premier League. It's not going to stop. It is relentless from now until May. So you need momentum. You need results that push you forward. So sometimes, as good as it is just grinding out 1-0s, 2-0s, 2-1s every single week and just racking up the points, every now and then you need a result and a performance as well that boosts everyone, that boosts the morale. And if there's one thing that's really annoying, it's the fact there wasn't a crowd in there today. It's the fact that there wasn't 50,000 Liverpool supporters going absolutely mental, watching their side pick apart a team that is supposed to be challenging them for the biggest prize of all, the Premier League title this season. But of course, they know what this kind of result means. They know what this performance means. And hopefully we can now carry this momentum going forward and just start steamrolling every team that comes our way. But in the meantime, Liverpool are back on joint top points at the top of the Premier League table with Tottenham Hotspur. Of course, goal difference has been massaged a little bit, but not quite enough to put us in first place. But hopefully, with the difficult games that Spurs have got coming up against Arsenal, Chelsea and Crystal Palace, it won't be long before Liverpool are back at the top of the Premier League table and ready to reclaim their crown. But until then, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you are new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back very soon for the pre-match video for our next game against Atalanta. Until then, bye for now.